Welcome to another episode of British Cars. So today we're going to try and get the TR2 frame, which is behind me. I'll move it over to my left. I need to get the rear axle off and then try to get it up on the sawhorses, and I'm not quite sure I'm going to do that. The easy way would be with the engine lift, but the engine lift is buried in the back of the tent. So let's see if there's another way you can do without having to spend all the time to dig it out. So we shall see. So we'll start by probably sliding the frame around to the side, and then we'll start working on that rear axle. So after further deliberation, I decided it was going to be easier to get the engine falls out and pick it up with that. It wasn't buried quite as bad as I thought, and this frame is pretty heavy with the axles intact. So let's do that. As you can see, we put this engine cradle on it, so I pick it from 2 points. Got it chained down, so hopefully it'll pick up relatively straight, because I'm here by myself, so no one to help me swing it around. Picking up one side than the other, don't know why. It's high enough. Just about. Sort of with it. Let it down a bit, get up more from the front. As you may have noticed, there's an air control on this lift. It didn't start out like this. This is a Harbor Freight 2-ton engine hoist. It's not the fold-up kind, so it's got extendable legs, extendable arms. This arm right now is only, well, it's got one more. Goes out about another foot, but it's really handy. These, if you're doing things besides lifting engines, like I used it to lift the posts in for the lift and everything. Let me put oil on that. This was the original pick point. I moved it to the identical pick point on the opposite side of the frame, and we'll see how that goes. Oh, that looks better. Bit. That should work. So here's the rear end. We're going to take this strap out. We'll have to undo these U-bolts. This is the sharp absorber link, and I guess this cable's got to come off. And that's about it. Most everything else is already disconnected from the work earlier. So I'll get started on that, and then we'll get back to you. Well, got the rear end undone, and someone's been here before me. As you can see, block nuts, standard nuts, split washers, flat washers, some no washers, just a real mix. Nothing terribly exciting here. It's always fun to grab this side of the bolt that holds the shock. It's got to use an open end wrench. This is the plate that was on the bottom of the axle. Just leaving it there till I lift all this out and get the springs out of here, make life easier. But it was all pretty straightforward because it was handy for these U-bolts. I had a 1/2-inch impact gun to make quick work of them. I had to pull emergency brake cable, which was a bolt. There's a bolt through that bracket right there, and then you open the split up, and it's just, you got to work against the spring tension, so you just got to pull the outer cable back and down and out it comes. There was a brake line still connected here. Got that out. The 4 U-bolts. The shocks are sitting here. They still have these are the bottom plates for the axles. I've left them together because we're going to take the springs off anyway. So it's time to pick it up. So let's see how that goes. And away we go. Just off balance a little bit here. See if that's a bit better balanced. Well, that looks good. We'll roll it over here against the tent, and that'll be good for now. So here's the rear spring. Gonna need to take the nut off the front hoop, and then we're gonna need to take the other 2 nuts off of the rear shackle. They're pretty grody, but I shot them up with penetrating oil last night. So I couldn't get the cotter pin out because it was rusted into the hole. So if that happens to you, what you can do is just drive the socket on over the nut, over the cotter pin, like this. And then once that's in place, you just get the ratchet in and just start turning, because it'll shear the cotter pin off pretty easily, actually. That'll save you a lot of aggravation. And on to the rear shackle. So these are 2 9/16 bolts. Actually came off a lot easier than I expected. They looked really nasty, but apparently there's just a little bit of dirt, mud mucked up around there. So they just unbolted, and as you can see, and just winded them off my fingers once it broke the tension. And of course, the bottom nut you can't get at with the socket, so I'm going to have to do that with just a ratchet wrench. So I'll do that and we'll get back to you. So now we just need to pry the springs off of the shackles. These are just rubber bushings that are pressed in. Actually pretty easy. They're a little sticky because they've been in there so many years, but I just used a big bar. Give you a little leverage, and then just pull the shackle out, or the spring off the shackle off the spring. I suppose it depends how you look at it. So moving on to the front, there actually is a silent block bushing, which is a rubber bushing that's bonded between an inner and outer steel tube. This one, the inner tube, is actually rusted onto the bolt, so it's going to just separate out. It's such an old bushing, it's not bonded anymore. So it's a little harder to pull off, but it's just not that big a deal. And just got stuff in the way, and get that out of there. And just get my big pry bar in there and give it a good yank. So I got the front separated out, and we'll just lift that up, twist it around a bit, get it off the back shackle. It's being a little stubborn, but we're gonna win in just a second. Come on, baby. Here we go. Come on. Come on. You can come off. Come on. There we go. And there we have it. One removed spring. So that inner tube is stuck on this front shackle bolt. We're going to need to get that off so we can get the bolt out of the frame. So my first thought is to try a big pair of pliers on it and see if it'll spin on the bolt. And let's see. And I'm pushing pretty hard and we're not having any luck, so I think we're going to have to move on to something different. So this is a tool, it's called a nut splitter. So you put the, normally you put a nut in there and just crank on it and split it in half, but I've used it before on other sleeves. Nothing quite as wide as this before, but it's worked really well on the lower pivots on front suspension and TR. So we'll give this a whirl. I'll just get it on, tighten it down, and we'll have to probably come across in 3 or 4 different sections. So here's tightening down on the 4th piece. I went across twice, so, but it took 4 widths to basically cut almost all the way across the sleeve. I'll take it off and then we'll take the pliers to it and see how it did. Well, I've actually escalated to a pipe wrench here, but it actually came off pretty easily when it was all said and done. I was really kind of surprised. It turns nice and easy, and I'll just work it back and forth till it comes off. Here's the pipe. When you look, you can see there's my marks. Made particularly a continuous cut by doing it 4 times edge to edge. And it's just, you can see how it's spread out the top of that. It made it come off really easy. Next, we're going to want to pull the bolts out of the frame. The heads are hidden sort of in this wedge, but there's an access hole in the frame. That other piece, you can just see it right here. So the back of the bolt has a large head and it has a hole with a 5/16 thread in it, so you can put a bolt in so you can pull the bolt. Well, that went a lot better than I thought it would. It's a 7/8 socket, and I cleaned out the hole in the end of the bolt, which is 5/16 fine. Put the socket over the whole thing. The socket's big enough that it touches the frame instead of anything else. Put the bolt into the end, tightened it up, got it, plenty tight. You don't go too much tighter, you don't want to worry about breaking the bolt. And then I got my little friend here, put the nut on the end to protect the threads, a couple of taps, and it's already moved easily an inch, so that's coming apart really well now. So that's kind of a surprise. I thought we were really going to struggle with these, to be honest. So here's the big end of the bolt. You can see the 5/16 fine thread that we cleaned up. And it's got, you see there's a flat on it too, because it fits into a little notch on the frame, so it won't rotate when you're trying to undo it. So it doesn't look too bad considering how old it is. The threads are still good. You probably should have cleaned it up a little bit before I try to push it through. Would have made life a little easier, but still it went fairly well. So I'm happy with that. Well, the other side came out even easier. Basically, for whatever reason, that bolt was oily, and just putting the puller bolt in started to snug it, just started to move. I think if you had just that bolt head and a slide hammer, it would come out really easy. So just thinking, I was told years ago by a guy who used to race TR3s that those bolts are removable like that because you can't get the springs out with the body on otherwise. So you have to take that bolt out. So that makes sense. That they were thinking, I mean, they used to do a lot of racing with these things, so they were kind of thinking about that stuff. So it's getting late in the day and the sun's low in the sky and it's in my eyes, so I'm sorry for that. But I think that'll be it, and we will see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have fun.